what Ecclesiastes 3 does to the way you see life. Tonight we're going to slow down and spend real time in Ecclesiastes Chapter 3, not just because it's famous, not just because it's poetic, but because this chapter does something unsettling and necessary to the way you see life. Most people know Ecclesiastes 3 for a few familiar lines. They've heard them at weddings, they've heard them at funerals, they've seen them quoted in songs, poems, and speeches. But very few people actually sit with what this chapter is saying. Because Ecclesiastes 3 isn't written to make you feel comfortable. It's written to make you honest. It forces you to face time, not as an idea, but as a power you don't control. It confronts you with change, loss, repetition, frustration, beauty, sorrow, all woven together. And if you let this chapter speak fully, it changes how you interpret your life, your pain, and your expectations of God. So we're going to walk through it slowly. We'll read it in pieces, we'll pause, and we'll let it do its work. Ecclesiastes 3:1. The sentence that sounds comforting, until you really hear it. To everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven. This sounds peaceful at first, almost soothing. But when you really think about it, it's also deeply confronting, because this sentence quietly tells you something you may not want to accept. There are moments in life you cannot hold on to, and there are moments you cannot avoid. You don't get to decide when a season ends. You don't get to negotiate with time. You don't get to pause life while you catch your breath. And notice how the verse is structured. It doesn't say some things have a season. It says everything does. That means your strength has a season. Your opportunities have a season. Your influence has a season. Even your clarity has a season. And that realization alone is enough to unsettle most people. Because modern life teaches us the opposite. That if you try hard enough, plan well enough, optimize enough, you can stay in control. Ecclesiastes 3 gently but firmly dismantles that illusion. Ecclesiastes 3, 2-8, the list that exposes reality. A time to be born and a time to die. Right away, the preacher places birth and death side by side, the beginning and the end. He doesn't soften it. He doesn't distract from it. The beginning and the end. He doesn't soften it. He doesn't distract from it. He puts them together because they define life under the sun. And then the list keeps going. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to heal and a time to wound. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. What's striking is the balance. For every moment we want, there's a moment we resist. For every joy, there's a loss. For every gain, there's a letting go. This list doesn't deny beauty, but it refuses fantasy. And that's important, because many people lose faith, not because life is hard, but because they were told faith would make life predictable. Ecclesiastes doesn't promise predictability. It promises honesty. And here's something subtle but powerful. This list is not chaotic. There's order to it, structure, rhythm, which suggests that even the painful seasons are not random accidents. They are still times. That doesn't make them pleasant, but it means they are not meaningless. Why this list feels heavy, not just poetic. If you listen carefully, the repetition itself starts to feel oppressive. A time, and a time, and a time. It keeps coming. It doesn't stop. And that's intentional. Because the preacher wants you to feel the monotony of life under the sun. The sense that no matter what you do, the cycle continues. You build, something breaks. You gather, something scatters. You love, something ends. And this confronts a deep human desire. We want the good seasons to last longer than they do. We want to freeze moments. We want permanence in a world built on change. Ecclesiastes doesn't shame that desire, but it doesn't indulge it either. Ecclesiastes 3:9-10. The question behind every busy life. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? This is the question beneath exhaustion, the question beneath ambition, the question beneath success. What does it really add up to? You work, you build, you strive, you accomplish. And then what? The preacher isn't lazy. He's not cynical for the sake of it. He's asking the question every honest person eventually asks, often late at night when everything goes quiet. And then he says, I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to when everything goes quiet. And then he says, I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. That phrase matters. God-given task. Meaning, your life is not random activity. You were given something to carry. But carrying it doesn't mean you fully understand it. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Eternity in your heart. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts. This is one of the most important lines in the entire book. It explains something about you that you've probably felt, but never fully named. You're not just reacting to moments. You're measuring them against something eternal. You want your life to matter. You want suffering to mean something. You want love to last beyond loss. You want death not to have the final word. That longing didn't come from culture. It didn't come from trauma. It didn't come from ambition. God put it there. You were made in the image of an eternal God, so your heart reaches beyond time, even while your body lives inside it. And then, the verse adds the tension. Yet no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. So you carry eternity in your heart, but not eternity in your understanding. You sense there is a larger story, but you don't get the full script. And this is where many people break. They demand answers God hasn't promised to give. They want explanations before trust. Ecclesiastes says, you will feel the pull of eternity, but you will not fully grasp God's plan. Not yet. Ecclesiastes 3:12-13. Receiving life instead of mastering it. I know that nothing is better than to rejoice, to do good, and to enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. This is not shallow optimism. This is survival wisdom. Because if you wait for life to make complete sense before you live it, you'll never live. So the preacher says, receive the good moments as gifts, not guarantees. Eat, drink, work honestly, do good, not because life is easy, but because joy is not owed. It is given. Ecclesiastes 3:14-15. What God does lasts. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Here's the anchor. Your plans are fragile. Your timelines change. Your seasons shift. But God's work is not temporary. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can shift. But God's work is not temporary. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can be taken from it. That's why faith isn't built on circumstances. It's built on the character of God. Ecclesiastes 3:16-17. In justice and faith. The preacher looks at the world and says what many are afraid to say. In places of justice, there is injustice. In places of righteousness, there is corruption. Faith that ignores this reality becomes dishonest, but Ecclesiastes refuses denial. and refuses despair. God will judge. That doesn't erase injustice now, but it insists injustice does not get the final word. Ecclesiastes 3:18-21, the humbling truth about death. The preacher compares humans and animals, not to insult humanity, but to humble it. Death levels everything. This truth is uncomfortable, but it also strips away arrogance. It reminds you, you are not God. You are dust, loved by God, but still dust. And that realization can either crush you or free you. Ecclesiastes 3:22, living well without pretending. So I perceive that nothing is better than that a man should rejoice in his own works. This is not resignation, it's realism. You don't control tomorrow, so live faithfully today. Not anxiously, not desperately, but honestly. What Ecclesiastes 3 actually does to your life. So let's pull it together. Ecclesiastes 3 does 4 deep things to you. First, it dismantles the illusion of control. You stop pretending you can manage time. Second, it validates your longing for eternity. That ache inside you is not weakness, it's design. Third, it teaches you how to live without answers, not by despair, but by trust. Fourth, it grounds you in humility and peace. You stop fighting the seasons and start walking through them with God. This chapter doesn't promise clarity. It promises honesty. It doesn't eliminate pain. It gives pain context. And if you let it, Ecclesiastes 3 will not just change how you see time, it will change how you carry your life.